You know how they say your life can change in one night? They never tell you that it can also end in the same breath. Mine almost did, right there, in a one-bedroom apartment with leaking pipes and wallpaper peeling like old scabs. It started with a letter. Not from a bank or landlord or lawyer, but from my little boy. Ethan was 6, missing his front teeth and half his crayons. He asked me if Santa Claus still read mail from our zip code. I told him Santa read everything. I lied, because mothers lie when the truth is too heavy. That night, he sat at the kitchen table while I washed dishes, his tongue sticking out the corner of his mouth in concentration. The letter said, "Dear Santa, I don't want toys. I want Mommy to smile again. And maybe if you can, send her a nice man to love her so she doesn't cry when she thinks I'm asleep." I almost tore it up. It felt too raw, like he'd seen too much. But he sealed it himself, wrote to Santa Claus North Pole, and asked me to mail it. I did, because hope is cruel, but it's worse to kill it in a child. I didn't know the letter would never reach the North Pole, that it would be intercepted by men who worked for a devil dressed in cashmere and control. 3 weeks later, I was still counting coins to pay rent, still pretending we were fine. The city was all sleet and cigarette smoke. Ethan wanted to hang tinsel on the window. I told him we'd do it tomorrow. I didn't have the heart to say tomorrow was just another day I had to survive. The night it happened, the air felt wrong, heavy, charged. Ethan was asleep, small and warm in his flannel pajamas. The lights flickered twice before I heard it. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, like judgment. I froze. We didn't get visitors. Not ever. When I opened the door, I almost dropped. The hallway light buzzed weakly behind him. And there he was. Tall. Built like sin in a pressed black coat. His shirt was undone just enough to look effortless, his presence almost unreal. He didn't belong in a building where the elevators barely worked. "Maria?" His voice wasn't a question. It was an assessment. "Yes?" I gripped the doorknob so hard my knuckles turned white. He looked down, holding a piece of paper. My stomach twisted. "Ethan's handwriting. This came to me," he said. "My assistant thought it was a prank." I didn't. My voice caught. "Who are you?" He smiled, faint, like he didn't bother to fake warmth. "Nikolai Russo." The name hit like a slap. Russo. The man you never look at twice, because he's the reason people disappear. The one whose men collect debts in body parts. "I think there's a mistake," I said quickly. "That letter was for Santa. Yes, I noticed." His tone was unreadable. "But your boy wrote it and it ended up on my desk. So here I am." I didn't know whether to laugh or slam the door. "If you came here to make a joke, I don't joke." He stepped forward slightly, and every instinct screamed danger. His presence filled the air, like even the shadows listened to him. He glanced past me, eyes landing on our tiny Christmas tree made of cardboard and dollar store glitter. For the briefest second, something in his face softened. Then it vanished. "You've got a brave kid," he said. "Smart, too. Doesn't ask for what he can't have." "Why are you here?" I whispered. He studied me. "Because someone needs to be." Ethan stirred in his bed, murmuring something in his sleep. Nikolai's eyes followed the sound, sharp but curious. "You live here alone?" "Yes, just me and my son." "Your husband?" "Gone. Dead or gone." I stiffened. "Both." He nodded once, like that answer satisfied him. "Then you're not safe." That's when I noticed it. The faint scrape carved into the doorframe, a small symbol burned into the paint. I thought it was just a scratch, but the way his gaze lingered on it made my skin crawl. "What is that?" I asked. "Mark of a debt," he said quietly. "Someone's been watching you." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Why? I don't owe anyone." He tilted his head. "Maybe your late husband did." The world tilted. I wanted to deny it, but his tone didn't leave room for lies. "I don't understand." "You will." "Pack a bag." "What?" "I'm not asking." I looked at him, at the stranger who spoke like law and looked like danger wrapped in elegance. "You can't just—" He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "If you stay here tonight, Maria, they'll come for you." For him, I didn't want to believe him, but something about his calm terrified me more than shouting would have. So I packed, shaking, confused, angry. Ethan blinked awake as I zipped the small suitcase. "Mommy, are we going on a trip?" "Yes, baby. Just a short one." Nikolai crouched beside him. For the first time, he didn't look like a monster. "You wrote me a letter. he said gently. Ethan smiled, rubbing his eyes. You're Santa? His mouth twitched. Something like that. We left through the back stairs. His men waited outside in black SUVs. The cold sliced through my coat. I held Ethan close, heart hammering. In the car, I stared at the city lights flickering past. Why are you helping us? He didn't look at me. Because your son reminded me what it feels like to believe in something good. I wanted to scoff, to tell him men like him didn't believe in anything but power. But then he turned to me, eyes dark and still, and said, You think I'm saving you, but you're wrong. You just stepped into my world, and once you're in, there's no going back. The silence that followed was heavier than the city outside. Ethan fell asleep on my lap. Nikolai stared out the window, jaw clenched like he was at war with himself. When we reached his mansion, my first thought was how empty it looked, like every light was fighting darkness and losing. He opened the car door for me. Inside, he said simply. I hesitated. If I say no, then they'll find you by morning. I looked down at Ethan's small face, peaceful for the first time in weeks. That was my answer. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and silence. No photos, no laughter. Just perfection polished to death. He led us upstairs, showed me a room with 2 beds, soft sheets, and windows too big to ever feel safe. You'll sleep here, he said. I didn't ask for this, I whispered. No one asked for the truth either. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Do you expect me to thank you? No, he paused. But maybe one day you'll understand. He turned to leave, but I stopped him. What happens now? He looked back, the faintest flicker of something human in his eyes. Now, you stop pretending you're not in danger. Then he left me standing there, holding my son in a stranger's house, wondering if I'd just escaped death, or walked straight into it. That night I couldn't sleep. The walls whispered secrets I couldn't hear. Somewhere downstairs I could feel his presence, calm, watchful, lethal. I lay awake listening to the rain, realizing that the man who'd answered Ethan's letter might have just rewritten both our lives. And the worst part? A tiny part of me didn't feel afraid anymore. It felt safe, which terrified me even more. Maria realizes she's already begun to trust the man she should fear most. The first week in Nikolai Russo's mansion felt like living inside a snow globe. Quiet, sealed, and unreal. Everything glittered. The glass staircases, the silver fixtures, even the air. But when you tapped it, it sounded hollow. He told me it was for protection. I told myself it was temporary. I told Ethan we were on a long visit with Santa's friend. Lies were easier to build than trust. The guards never looked at me, just nodded when I passed. They spoke Russian in clipped tones. Every door seemed heavier than it needed to be, every window too clean, like no one had ever dared to touch it. Ethan adjusted faster than I did. He ran across polished marble like it was a playground, built Lego towers that reached halfway up the glass walls. I watched him from a distance, half waiting for the world to remind him that joy has limits. Nikolai rarely spoke. He'd disappear for hours, then reappear without sound, like a shadow that had learned manners. The second night, Ethan asked him to read a bedtime story. I thought he'd refuse, but he sat down, the book almost absurd in his large hands. His accent turned Goodnight Moon into something ancient and reverent. Ethan fell asleep before the last page. I didn't. When he left the room, I followed him down the hall. Why are you doing this? I asked. He didn't stop walking. Because the men who marked your door won't stop until you're gone. I swallowed. And you're just the noble savior now? That made him turn. Don't mistake my motives for kindness. You're leverage. If they come for you, they come to me. He said it so coldly that it almost worked. Almost made me believe I was just a pawn. But when I looked at him, really looked, there was something cracked behind that control. I don't want to be your leverage, I said. He leaned closer, eyes unreadable. Then stop being afraid of me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls like melted gold. Ethan sat at the massive dining table eating strawberries bigger than his hands. Santa's friend is nice, he said through a mouthful. He said I can go outside later if I stay close to the house. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. He did what? Nikolai walked in, phone in hand, looking unbothered. Relax, he'll have guards with him. He's 6. And he'll be fine, he said evenly. You think I built walls for nothing? I hated how calm he was. Hated how the word safe sounded so convincing when he said it. Later that day, I went exploring. The house was a labyrinth of silence. In one wing, I found a room that wasn't like the others. Dim, filled with old photographs. A young boy, maybe 7, with dark eyes that matched Nikolai's. His expression wasn't serious. It was empty. On the desk, a single photo faced outward. Nikolai holding the same boy, older now. Both wearing black suits. The frame was dusty. I heard him before I saw him. You shouldn't be here. I turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, one hand in his pocket. Who's the boy? I asked. He didn't answer right away. My brother. Where is he now? Dead. Something in his tone froze me. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he said. He made his choices. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that photograph. About the boy's hollow stare. About how it mirrored the one Nikolai wore when he thought no one was watching. Days blurred. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at Ethan like he was something he didn't understand. Something he'd forgotten how to hold. One evening, I found Ethan sitting on the couch showing Nikolai a drawing. That's you, he said proudly, pointing at a stick figure with a red tie. And that's Mommy, and that's me. Nikolai's brow furrowed. Why am I frowning? Ethan giggled. Because you don't know how to smile yet. For one impossible moment he did. The illusion didn't last. A few nights later, I heard shouting downstairs. Russian words fast and sharp. I crept to the balcony and saw Nikolai slamming a file onto the table. Papers scattered. His men stood frozen. When the others left, I saw what he'd been holding, a photo. Of me. Taken days before the letter ever reached him. I went cold. He looked up, sensing me. You should be asleep. What is that? He hesitated. Evidence. Of what? That someone's been watching you for months. I walked closer, staring at the photo. Why? Who would? He cut me off. Your husband owed money before he died. They didn't collect it. My husband... I started, but my throat closed. He spoke like a knife. He borrowed from me, then from them. Tried to play both sides. I felt my chest tighten. So that's it? We're collateral damage? Not anymore. What does that mean? It means they won't touch you as long as you're under my name. I wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to shatter all that control. But instead I whispered, and when you get tired of playing protector? He stepped closer. Then God help whoever tries to hurt you. That was the first night I didn't know if I wanted to slap him or kiss him. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of shattering glass. Then, gunfire. I grabbed Ethan, heart racing. Stay down, baby, Nikolai's voice echoed from the hallway. Maria! I opened the door just as he stormed in, gun drawn. He looked like the calmest kind of chaos. They're inside, he said. The next moments blurred. Shouts, running footsteps, the smell of smoke, Ethan crying against my shoulder. I dropped behind a couch as bullets cracked the air. Then silence. Then footsteps. When I looked up, Nikolai was standing over 2 bodies. Blood on his hands, his shirt ripped. He looked both terrifying and human. I couldn't move. You're bleeding, I whispered. He looked down like he hadn't noticed. Not the first time. I crawled toward him, shaking. You could have been killed. He half smiled, grim. Would have been worth it. Don't joke like that. Wasn't a joke. Ethan whimpered behind me. Nikolai turned to him, voice softening. It's over. You're safe. He collapsed before I could say another word. His body hit the marble hard, the sound echoing like a verdict. I screamed his name, pressed my hands against the wound, felt the warmth of his blood seep through my fingers. He opened his eyes, barely conscious. Don't let him see me like this. You'll be fine, I lied. His gaze locked on mine. You shouldn't have trusted me. Then his hand fell away. I sat there on the cold floor, Ethan clinging to my arm, the guards shouting orders, the house filling with sirens. For a man who'd built his life around silence, Nikolai Russo fell with a sound I'll never forget, the sound of someone breaking open the moment they finally tried to save something worth losing. Nikolai lies unconscious, and Maria realizes her survival now depends on the man who may never wake up. When people talk about survival, they always mean the body. They don't talk about the mind, the way it keeps replaying the moment everything fell apart like a broken record. I lived inside that loop for months. The gunfire, the blood, Nikolai's hand slipping from mine. He survived, but barely. The ambulance came too late for the men who'd tried to kill us, but just in time for him. I remember sitting in the back of that van, holding Ethan on my lap while medics fought to keep Nikolai breathing. His face was pale, his shirt soaked through. I'd never prayed before that night. Not really, but I did then. They kept him in a private clinic, the kind hidden behind gates and guards. He was unconscious for 3 days. I never left. Ethan colored pictures for him and taped them to the wall. One had a big red heart that said, "Thank you for saving my mom." When he finally opened his eyes, the first thing he did was look for me. "You're still here," he rasped. I couldn't leave. He tried to smirk, failed halfway. "That's a mistake." I didn't answer. I just pressed a cup of water to his lips and said, "Drink." He did, his eyes never leaving mine. There was something different there. Less steel, more ache. For a few days, he let me stay close. He'd fall asleep mid-conversation, wake up disoriented. Once he reached for me in his sleep and whispered, "Don't go." I didn't, but when he got strong enough to stand, he changed. Walls went back up. Orders returned. Guards at every door. He told me I could leave now, that the threat was handled. His tone was clipped, final. "What about you?" I asked. "I'm not the kind of man who gets to rest." "And you think I am?" He looked away. "You've got a son to raise, a life to rebuild. Don't waste it here." So I left. Ethan and I moved 2 towns over, to a quiet street with maple trees and nosy neighbors. I got a job at a bookstore. The owner, an old woman named Ruth, paid me under the table at first. She said I looked like someone trying to remember what peace felt like. She wasn't wrong. Ethan started school. He brought home finger paintings and stories about playground adventures. The world began to sound normal again. But every night, when I locked the door and turned off the lights, the silence pressed too hard. I missed him. God help me, I missed him. The way his voice dropped when he was angry. The way he'd look at Ethan like he couldn't quite understand why protecting us mattered so much. The way his presence filled every empty space. I told myself missing him was weakness. But grief doesn't care about logic. It just lingers until it becomes part of your breathing. 3 months passed. Christmas came again. Ethan wrote another letter to Santa. I smiled when he handed it to me. "What are you wishing for this time?" He grinned. "A dog." That night, after he went to bed, I found the letter on the counter. It didn't say anything about a dog. It said, "Please tell Santa to bring my friend back, the one with the nice suit and the sad eyes." I cried quietly, because there are some things you can't explain to a child. Like how good people don't always come wearing halos. Sometimes they wear guilt like armor. The snow fell thick that night. I made cocoa, watched the world go white, and let myself believe he'd never come back. Maybe that was mercy. But on Christmas Eve, someone knocked, soft, deliberate, familiar. My heart stopped. I opened the door, and there he was. Nikolai stood in the snow, a long coat dusted white, eyes darker than I remembered. He looked thinner, older, like he'd been through a storm and didn't bother drying off. "Maria." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The only thing I managed was, "You shouldn't be here." He gave a small, crooked smile. "You said that last time too. What do you want?" His eyes flicked past me. "Is he here?" "Sleeping." "Good." He hesitated. "He shouldn't see me." "Then why come?" "Because I made him a promise." I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. The air was sharp and cold. "What promise?" "That I'd make you smile again." The words hit me harder than they should have. "And you think showing up like this is the way?" "I just wanted to see you. Make sure you were living." I crossed my arms, trying to hold steady. "We are. You don't have to protect us anymore." He nodded slowly. "I know." For a long moment we just stood there, snowflakes catching in his hair, breath fogging between us. I could feel the distance we'd built. Necessary, painful, honest. You look different, I said quietly. So do you. Stronger. He huffed something close to a laugh. You were always strong, Maria. You just forgot. Silence again. He reached into his coat and handed me a small envelope. For Ethan. Inside was a photograph. Him sitting in front of a car, wearing that faint, reluctant smile. On the back, written in careful ink, "Tell your mother I kept my promise." My chest ached. Where will you go? Does it matter? It does to me. His gaze softened. Then, somewhere far from here, I've been cleaning up what's left of the mess. My men, my enemies. No one will come for you again. I swallowed hard. You could stay. He looked at me like I'd said something sacred and dangerous all at once. You don't want me in your world, Maria. I poison everything I touch. Not everything. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just looked at me, eyes tired and full of something that almost looked like peace. He took a step closer. My breath hitched. If I kiss you now, he murmured, you'll never let me walk away. Maybe I don't want to. He smiled faintly. You should, but he didn't move. Neither did I. The kiss wasn't desperate. It wasn't wild. It was quiet, like an apology, a confession, and a goodbye all folded into one moment. His hand brushed my cheek, cold and trembling. When he pulled back, his voice was barely a whisper. Keep smiling for him. That's all I wanted. He turned and walked away before I could answer. The snow swallowed his footsteps. The night erased his shadow. I stood there until the cold reached my bones, until I realized I was crying and laughing at the same time. Ethan's voice broke the silence behind me. Mommy? I turned. He was standing at the door in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Was that Santa again? I nodded. Something like that. He smiled sleepily. Did he bring a present? Yes, I whispered, touching the photograph in my hand. The best one. That night, after Ethan went back to bed, I sat by the window watching the snow. The world felt still, like holding its breath. I thought about Nikolai, his impossible calm, his violence wrapped in grace, his quiet heartbreak. I realized I didn't need to know where he was. Some people belong to the world they built, no matter how hard they try to leave it. But he'd given me something he couldn't keep for himself. Peace. And in that peace, I rebuilt. I kept the photograph in a drawer, but sometimes I take it out and tell Ethan stories about the man who saved us. I tell him that monsters aren't always evil, and heroes don't always wear capes. Some just show up when you need them most, bleed for you, and disappear into the night. The letter that started it all still hangs on the fridge. The crayon is fading now, but I can still read the words. I just want Mommy to smile again. I smile every day now, sometimes for real. Sometimes because I promised him I would. Love didn't save me. It changed me. It burned everything false and left only truth. And the truth is this. He wasn't the ending I dreamed of. He was the one I needed to learn how to begin again. Love turned to survival, peace earned through fire, and a promise kept through silence. If this story caught your breath, don't just scroll past. Subscribe for more whispered confessions, forbidden love, and the kind of endings that still ache hours later. Every week, a new voice, a new secret, a new reason to believe love survives even in the dark.